Here's an example of using an Access database with Alpha, using some fairly common processes, as you've pointed out, with db count and db sum and that sort of thing, but just doing it a little bit a different way, because I feel that those wrappers are expensive in terms of time and code. So when you're dealing with SQL databases, it's much easier to go directly after the data. Now, having said that, with Access databases, it's a much better idea if you just migrate your Access database right to SQL Server or MySQL. You'll get much better response out of the database, because Access just won't be able to do what you need it to do in a timely manner, I'd say. So just far more robust moving to a real SQL database. So here we've got a UX component. This was built using one of the alpha templates. There's not much different that I changed in here. I added the binding for the tables. I think down here in shipping, it wasn't saving the default UX was not saving the shipping to a table. It wasn't being bound to a field in the table, so I just bound it to an extra field that was in there. I didn't add anything to the table. And this is using the Alpha Sports MDB that ships with Alpha. So you'll find it in the MDB files of the installation folder inside program files. So what else can we say about this? A couple of fields that I did add were SIM invoices and count invoices. So these are two items that are coming directly from an XBasic callback. So these are being computed by SQL, and I'll show you how to do that. But just to go right from the beginning, let's pop back into Alpha. This is the UX that was created, and all we did here was create a new component, web component, UX component, and I chose, I think this is the one I chose. Yeah, invoice order. Yeah, that's right. So I clicked OK there. It creates a new UX, and that's what we wind up with. Now again, it's not bound. There's some information in here in the freeform container. So if we look at the freeform layout, there's actually some instructions in there about which tables you need to start binding it to, particularly for the repeating section. And so what we'll do is we'll just leave that. I won't save it. We'll just pop back into the one that I created. And if we look at the data binding here, what I did was went to binding, specified tables. Now I added the invoice header, invoice items for the repeating section, and product for some information on the repeating section. And in the invoice header, I added the customer table to pick up some customer information. And these are all, as you can see, these are all linked parent link fields based on link fields. Product is linked in, and the customer is linked in based on customer ID back to the invoice header. The let's see, the SQL Alpha DAO connection again is going to the Alpha Sports database, and for me that's found on my eDrive program files x86. Wherever you have Alpha 5 installed, under MDB files, and it's the Alpha Sports MDB. I'll just close that. So once you've got the tables in there, then we can actually bind the controls to each table. And I think I didn't bind these. I added those afterwards. So let's just bind these now. These are not going to be bound, so I can just toggle update on those. Set that to no. What else is not being updated? Subtitle is already set to no, or subtotal rather, and the tax and a grand total. Those are not set. So because there's some interesting. I think I didn't do that properly. So I'll just reset those. update. Let's go back to the control. So let's run this in live preview. Some really interesting things here that Alpha lets you do. I added these controls on here first next buttons and the submit button and the reset buttons. I added those in, but you can see we can walk through the database getting various records, so that's great. Now, how does Alpha go about looking after the subtotals, the tax rates, and the grand total and the tax amount? Let's go and have a look at that. So we'll go into the subtotal first. It's a calculated field expression. We'll pop in there. And here's our calculated field expression here. And what we can do is insert a field. And if you look at the fields, a suggestion for a number of the fields are already in place. So these were already in place once the UX was created from the template. So you can see that Alpha just pops this information in here. In this particular case, it's that one, which I'm not going to save, of course. Tax rate, the amount of tax, again, it's summary, extended total. So we're taking a summary of the extended total and we're multiplying by the tax rate that we've got. So we can insert fields for calculations, whatever we want to do. And this is the extended total, so it's picking up this part from the repeating section and doing a summary on it. Shipping, grand total, here's another good one. It's summary extended total plus the summary extended total for the tax rate. So taking the regular amount for the extended total, working out the tax, it's adding the shipping, and that's it. So those are all calculated fields within a UX, so that's good. And now for the parts I added, which are summary customer invoice and count customer invoice. Those are a couple of things you said you wanted to look at. So we created client-side event. So we are using a client-side event called after populate from table. I'm doing a run action here. So what I did here was I inserted an action, or rather action JavaScript. I created one. I called it get table data. So we'll go and edit that action. And that action is an AJAX callback, which I just chose from here. So it's an AJAX callback. And then what that looks like is it's an internal XBasic function. The function name is get invoice data, so that's what I'm calling it. And then create a function prototype. That's what the prototype program looks like. That's our XBasic function here. So you just copy it to the clipboard. I'm not doing anything else fancy here. And then we go to our XBasic functions and paste that function in. So that's what this is. And then it's just an example. It's, all the code that you get in here as default is all commented out. And then you can just read through it and see what you can use that's in the E object that's passed into this function. In this particular case, I don't think I'm using, I am using something from the E object. But what we're doing here is we're setting up a SQL connection, setting up a flag to tell me whether some of my calls are true or false. So I'm testing their validity. Setting up a SQL statement, establishing a result set, and I'm establishing some arguments I'm going to pass into the SQL statement. I'm opening up my SQL connection. It's Alpha Sports. That's the Alpha Sports database. So Alpha Sports is the name of the SQL connection that I established here. So that's that. And then I'm going to get the invoice number that's currently on the screen. So that's in E, data submitted invoice number. I'm assigning it to a variable, current invoice ID. And I can get rid of these two statements. I'm setting up an argument that I'm going to pass into the SQL statement. So args.set, there's my argument name, and there's the value I'm passing it. So the SQL statement is I'm going to select sum of the extension amount as some extension. I'm going to count the invoice number. So I'm going to do a count of invoices as count invoice from the invoice items where my invoice number is equal to the invoice number we're passing in here. So that's our argument. So I run this. Oops, sorry. I run this. I get a flag back. If the flag is true, then I've got a valid statement. So that's good, and it executed properly. So now I'm going to dimension total invoice. My record set is being set to the connection result set. So there's my result set up here, the record set and a result set. So that's how you specify that. So I'm looking at a total invoice, which is in RS data some extension. And I'm just doing a format data to make it look pretty. And then I'm going to get a count of invoices, and that's in, as you can see, they count CNT invoice. So I'm going after RS data for that as well. And then since this is the name of my function, I'm going to pass back some JavaScript. I get to do that. So JavaScript coming back is a set value. There's a dialog object set value, and I'm putting it into some customer invoice. You remember I have these two fields here, some customer invoice and count customer invoice. And so I'm setting a value into there based on the total invoice there, semicolon, and I'm doing another set value here for the count invoice. If there was an error, then we take care of that, and that was for the execution of the SQL statement. If we had trouble opening the connection in the first place, there was some error code sitting here. And I think that's it. So based on this, let's put a debug statement in here. So every time, let's save that, client side. So every time we populate data into this table, every time we populate data into the form from the table, this code is going to run. So that means every time we click on one of these previous, first, next buttons, anything like that, then that code's going to run for us. So we'll go and do live preview, and our code runs. If we just walk through this code, do our dimensions. I don't know if you need that portable enabled. I don't think so. So we open our connection. So good, the flag is true, so that's good. If the flag is true, then we're going to go and get our invoice number from e.datasubmitted, and e.datasubmitted carries just E carries just a bucket of stuff, and one of them is data submitted, and that carries all the current data that you can see in the form. So that's good, so we'll just step through that. We put together our SQL statement and our arguments. We execute it. Flag is true. And then we just go and get the data coming back from that SQL statement. Now, if I take that debug statement out, and it just pops in. And it's really fast. Next. Next. So as you can see, you can get on-screen stuff going with a number of built-in functions that you can use in a UX. You can make calls out to an XBasic routine which connects with your SQL database and brings back anything that you want it to, and then you can just arrange to have that written back to the screen. And that's just one really small example of some stuff that you can get done. Thanks for having a look.